When we started working on formative assessment, or assessment for learning as it's sometimes called, we were focusing very much on feedback. So we started with feedback because that's where the research was most clearly organised. We then realised that unless you'd asked the right question, then feedback wasn't very useful. So questioning and feedback came into the equation together. As we worked with teachers to implement this in classrooms, we discovered you couldn't change what the teacher was doing without changing what the students were doing. And in particular, the importance of student self-assessment, what we sometimes call activating students as owners of their own learning, and peer assessment, or what we sometimes call activating students as teaching resources for one another, assumed much greater salience. Now, when we talk about peer assessment, a lot of people immediately assume we're just talking about having kids marking each other's work so that the teacher doesn't have to do it. And people always get the wrong idea because that's summative peer assessment. What we have discovered is that formative peer assessment, where students are helping each other improve their work, has benefits for the person who receives feedback, but also has benefits for the person who gives the feedback. Because in thinking through what it is that this piece of work represents and what needs to happen to improve it, the students are forced to internalize a success criteria, and they're able to do it in the context of somebody else's work, which is less emotionally charged than your own. So what we see routinely now, we see it very, very commonly, is when students have given feedback to others about a piece of work, their own subsequent attempts at that same work are much improved because they are now much clearer about what good work in that task looks like. So that's been, and I think one of the real breakthroughs is just the real benefit of peer and self-assessment, both for the person who is doing the assessment, self-assessment, and the person who's giving feedback, the peer assessment. We see students being very, very effective commentators on each other's work and giving very, very sound advice, sometimes a lot harder than the teacher would give. One of the things that you see quite routinely in classrooms is children being much tougher on each other than the teacher would dare to be because of the emotional relationships and the power relationships there. But actually, it's generally pretty much spot on.